Now, all right, guys, what we're looking at today, to Monday and Tuesday, is going to be the same thing. We're dealing with factoring. Now, we've done this part here before, because if we want to simplify these expressions, we distribute it out. So we would do 4x times x. And 4x times x is 4x squared. Then we can also do our 4x times negative 3. Well, 4 times negative 3 is negative 12, and we have x. Then the next part is going to be our negative 5 times x, and negative 5 times x is negative 5x. And lastly, we'll do negative 5 times negative 3. And negative 5 times negative 3, the negative and negative would make a positive, and we get 15. And the last thing we need to do is combine like terms. 12x minus 5x is negative 17x plus 15. And y'all have done these multiplication steps before, multiplying two binomials together. Questions on this here so far?
Should we not combine the 4x and the rest of the x? Get the square?
Because it has the square. 4x squared and 17x are going to be two different things.
Oh. I don't know if you could combine those and then just still put the squared on that.
No, they're going to be two different things, because 4x squared is saying that we have 4 times x times x. The other one is 17 times x. We only have one of them in one case, and the other we have two.
Okay.
Let's look at this other one here. So if we distribute this one, well, 4x times x is still 4x squared. 4x times negative 4 is negative 16x, because our 4 times 4 is going to be 16. Our next one that we have is negative 4 times x is, bless you, negative 4x. And last but not least, negative 4 times negative 4. Negative makes it positive, and 4 times 4 is. And if we combine like terms, we get 4x squared minus 20x plus 16 is our polynomial expression. Questions on this here? Now, we'll skip that one here. Now, factoring ax squared plus bx plus c, what we have here. Previously, you factored polynomials of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where a is equal to 1. To factor polynomials of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where a is different than 1, we actually have a value for a. We first need to look for a greatest common factor of the terms of the polynomial expression. Factor it out first, if possible. So we want to factor out the greatest common factor first. So whenever we're factoring, the first thing we want to look for is a greatest common factor. We're wanting to look for something, a term or expression or numbers that will go into all three. And whenever we factor, that's the first thing we want to look for, is the greatest common factor. 5, because 5 will go into 5, 15, and 10. Whenever we factor out a greatest common factor, it's got to go into all three. So really what we're doing is we're dividing each term by that number. So 5x squared divided by 5 is just x squared, plus 15 divided by 5 is, and we still have the x, plus 2, because 10 divided by 5 is 2. So when we factor, this is the first thing we're going to do, is try to factor out any greatest common factor. So any questions on this so far? Now, in Algebra 1, y'all did do some factoring, our two sets of parentheses. And we looked at the factors of x squared, the factors of 2 for this one here, and worked it out that way. Now, our next step in factoring this is seeing if the x squared plus 3x plus 2 will factor. Because as we've already seen here, we took two sets of parentheses, two things that are being multiplied together, and they gave us this here. What we're doing with factoring is we're going the other way around. We're taking it from our ax squared plus bx plus c back to our two sets of parentheses. So the main way I look at this with this here is we're going to start off by writing two sets of parentheses with three spaces. Two sets of parentheses with three spaces. So when we have this here, we'll have 5 parentheses, 1, 2, 3, parentheses, parentheses, 1, 2, 3. Because as you saw with the first two, we did, in each one of those parentheses, we had two terms, a number and variable, a sign, and then another number. And that's what's going to go in these three spaces. So we're setting it up so that we have room to fit things in, fit the signs and numbers in, and we can go from this here. Now the third step that I do, and I look at it, especially with factoring, is the sign. There's going to be two signs. Because each one of these parentheses will have a sign in the middle for that middle term. And we need to figure out what they are. Now, if the third term is positive, then the signs are the same. And match the middle term. The signs are the same and match the middle term. So our third step is really finding the signs. So if the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. Now, the third term could also be negative. If third term is negative, as we're saying, if the third term is negative, then the signs are opposite. So if the third term is negative, the signs are just opposite. One sign is going to be positive, one sign is going to be negative. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. Questions on this so far? So yes, we could set the first one as always being positive, not always, but there's a good chance it could be. Because here, if the signs are the same, they match the sign of the middle term. So if the third term is positive and the middle term is negative, they're both going to be negative. If the first term, so let's look at this here, the third term is positive, yes? So the signs are the same and they match the sign of the middle term. So the sign of the middle term is what? Because this is positive, so they're the same. And our middle term is? So our signs are going to be positive and positive. Questions on this so far? So, and there's a reasoning behind this because the middle term 2, just like with this here, the third term is 16, yes? Where did we get 16 from? So our negative 4 times negative 4, yes? If it's negative and negative, well, a negative times a negative is a. If they were both positive, well, a positive times a positive is a positive. It's still positive, yes? So if the third term's positive, these two here would have to be the same, either both negative or both positive, yes? But how do we get the middle term from 4x times negative 4 and negative 4 times x, yes? Well, we got a negative and negative, and they add together to be a negative. So for here, the third term's positive, but the signs would both be negative. Questions on this so far? So really, whenever we're factoring, kind of looking for the sign, we look at the third term. If the third term's positive, the signs are the same, and they match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. One's positive, one's negative. Questions on this so far? Okay. Fourth step. Find the factors of the first and third term. Find the factors of the first and third term. All right, I'm going to have to write this over to the side. We want to find the factors in the first and third term. Now go on and put the last step. Check. Our last step is to check. And we're checking to make sure we factored it correctly. Questions on this so far? Okay, that's fine. Okay. Let's do that later. So let's look at this here. So we got the sign, so we're looking for the factors of the first and third term, yes? What's the first term? Well, the first term here is what? X squared. What multiplies together to give me x squared? X and x. And whenever we only have one set of factors, we go on and throw it in. We go on and put them in. Now for this chapter, I would say that using a pencil is going to be very helpful. Because again, the last step is what? Check. Because if the way we set it up doesn't give us the correct equation, we're going to change it. We're going to switch the values in and out. Because x squared, for most all the ones we'll do, it's going to be x and x. That's going to be the same for every single one. But if we had something other than, say, the other ones, factors of 2, if we had factors of 4, well, we have 1 and 4 or 2 and 2. So we could try one set of the factors, and if they don't work, we're going to switch them up and try a different set of factors and keep trying it till we get the correct one. But 2's only factors are what? 1 and 2. So we can put in 1 and 2. And the last step is to check. Check it here. Now, a lot of books, when they say check, they want us to multiply the whole thing back out. We don't have to do the 5, but we're going to multiply these two back together to see, do we get back to x squared plus 3x plus 2? Do we get back to that? And they would start off with doing x times x. Well, where did we get x and x? So would that always multiply back together to give me x squared? Yeah. If you're not confident you found the factors right, we can go on and check it, but we got x and x from x squared, yes? That's still going to be the same. And the same is true if we said this here, 1 times 2. Where did we get 1 times 2? The factors of 2, yes? Those should multiply back together to give us 2, yes? So really, what we're really focusing on is less the factors of the first or third term, but the middle. The middle term is the one that normally changes, depending on the setup. So you can go on and do the whole multiplication, but the main one I focus on is this here. X times 2 and 1 times x. I'm focused on those because they give us the middle term. Now, x times 2 is 2x, positive 2x, yes? 1 times x is plus x. And what is 2x plus x? Positive 3x, yes? What was the middle term that we want? Positive 3x, yes? Is that what we got? So right there is your answer.
Where did we get just x?
1 times x.
Oh.
Because we could have gone and done the whole thing. X times x is x squared. Then we'd have plus 2x plus x. And then 1 times 2 gives us plus 2, which tells us that we have x squared plus 3x plus 2. I don't normally do the first two because I feel confident that finding the factors of x squared, we can do that, x and x.
Yeah.
We can find the factors of 2, 1 and 2. So really the one that changes is the middle term, and that's the one we're checking.
So we should always do the first and last and the second and third.
I mean, we could do it the other way if you want to make sure you got it all right, but really the only one that's changing is that. Questions on this here? We want to factor this here. 4x squared plus 32x plus 60. Is there a greatest common factor between these three? Almost, because 6 won't go into 4. 2 will, but 4 will also. So I would use 4, because we want to use the greatest common factor, the biggest number that will go into all three. Because 4 goes to the 4x squared and leaves us with x squared. 32 divided by 4 is 8x, plus 60 divided by 4 is 15. And again, you could do that in a calculator. You can do 4 over 4, get 1, so we just have the x squared. 32, so 32 divided by 4 is 8. 60 divided by 4 is 15. Questions on this so far? So that takes care of step number 1, greatest common factor. Step number 2 is our 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. So we'll have 1, 2, 3. Parentheses, parentheses, 1, 2, 3. And that takes care of step number 2, yes? Step number 3, signs. If the third term is positive, then the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. So the sign of the third term is positive. So their signs are going to be the same and match the middle term, which is, so our signs are plus and plus. Questions on this so far? The next step is to find the factors of the first and third terms. So the factors of the first term are factors of what? X squared, yes? Well, there's only one set, correct? They're what? X and X. Now we need to find the factors of 15, where there's 1 and 15 and 3 and 5. A little bit, yes. And the more that you do of these, the better you'll get at anticipating what the factors are going to be, which one are more likely going to occur. Now, looking at these here, 1 and 15, 3 and 5, which one do we want to try first? Okay. And this is part of the reason why I said having a pencil or using a pencil is helpful, because if we get the wrong factors first, we can erase them and put them in a new arrangement. And this is also why the last step of this is to check it to make sure we get the correct arrangement. And when we check this, well, we could do x times x. That's still x squared, yes? And 3 times 5 is still 15. So the ones we're wanting to check are these here. X times positive 5 is positive 5x. 3 times x is going to be plus 3x. And 5x plus 3x is 8x. Is that the middle term we wanted? Mm-hmm. And that's it. Questions on any of this here? Are we good with this here so far? We ready for the next one? (4x squared plus 13x plus 3). Is there a greatest common factor between 4, 13, and 3? No. 13 and 3 are both prime, so there's no number that will go into all three. So sometimes there's not going to be a greatest common factor. It's nice if there is, but it doesn't always have to be. So we finish with step number 1, yes? Step number 2 is what? 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. So that takes care of steps number 1 and 2, yes? Which moves us on to step number 3. We need to find the signs. So we look to the third term. The third term is positive, yes? So the signs are the same and they match the sign of the middle term, which is positive. So the both of them are positive, positive and positive. So that takes care of steps 1, 2, and 3. Any questions on this so far before we start step number 4? No questions? 4x squared and 3. We want to find the factors of these two here, yes? Well, 4x squared, we're finding the factors of 4 and x squared, yes? What do we know about the factors of x squared? It's what? X and? Since we know that it's going to be x and x, I'm going to go on and put those in, because that's the only way we can arrange x squared. So the factors of 4 are what? 1 and 4 or 2 and 2. Now again, I said our last step is to check, yes? So we can pick one of these, and if it's wrong, we can switch it at any point. So which one do we want to try first? 1 and 4 or 2 and 2? 2 and 2. So we can put 2 and 2. Well, now we need to look at the factors of the third term, which is 3. Well, the only factors are what? 1 and 3, yes? 1 and 3. Any questions on this here so far? Now the last step is to check, yes? Well, 2x times 2x is still 4x squared, yes? We would agree with that. 1 times 3 is still 3. So really what we want to see is these here. 2x times 3. Well, 2 times 3 is 6, and we have x. 1 times 2x is plus 2x. And 6x plus 2x gives us what? 8x. Is that the middle term we wanted? What did we want? 13, yes? So this here, 2x plus 1 times 2x plus 3 is not the correct setup. Yes, because I would try switching the 1 and 3. Because if I flip the 1 and 3, would that change anything? No, because it's 2x and 2x. So what we could do is get rid of the 2 and 2 and change it to 4 and 1. I'm just putting the 4 in one place. It really doesn't matter at this point because, again, what are we going to do now? We're going to check it again. So we can do 4x times 3, and 4x times 3 is 12x. 1 times x is plus x, and 12x plus x is 13x. Is that the arrangement we want? Because the middle term we wanted was? Did we get that? So this is it here. Now if I'd done 1 and 4, if we did this setup and it didn't give us 13x, we could try switching the 1 and 4 or the 1 and 3 and try it again and keep trying different arrangements. So a lot of this is guess and check. We get it so far? So a lot of this is not so much knowing the exact way to do it every single time. It's setting it up and trying it, setting it up and trying it, and trying different arrangements so that we get to the answer. Let's look at this next one here. So we have 3x squared minus 7x plus 2. Is there a number that will divide into all three? No, there's not a greatest common factor among all three. So, looking at this here, when we look at 3x squared, 7x, and 2, there's not a number or variable that will go into all three, correct? Well, no. So, we move on to step number 2. Our 2 parentheses with 3 spaces. 2 parentheses with 3 spaces. Now, that moves us on to step number 3. We want to find the signs. So if the third term here is positive, the signs are the same and they match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, our signs are opposite. So looking at this here, is the third term positive or negative? So the signs are the same and they match the sign of the middle term. What's the sign of the middle term? Negative. So our signs are what? Negative and negative. So if the third term is positive, the signs are the same and they match the sign of the middle term, which here is negative and negative. Any questions on this so far? Now that brings us to the fourth step, which is finding the factors of the first and third term. So we're finding the factors of 3x squared. Well, the factors of x squared are going to be x and x. And the factors of 3 are, well, 1 and 3. Where do we want to put the 3? In the first set of parentheses or the second one? Doesn't matter. So second. So we have this here. Now we need to find the factors of 2. Well, what are the factors of 2? 1 and 2. Where do we want to put the 1? In the first set or the second set? Doesn't matter which, because we can put 1 there and 2 here. Because again, the last step is to check it. Now x times 3x is still 3x squared. Negative 1 times negative 2 is still positive 2. So we need to check the middle terms. So if we do x times negative 2, it would give us negative 2x. Negative 1 times 3x is minus 3x. And 2x minus 3x is negative 5x. It's not what we want. So what do we want to switch? So we can switch the 2 and 1, which gives us 2 and 1. And we can try it again. X times negative 1 is negative x. Negative 2 times 3x, well, negative 2 times 3 is negative 6x. And negative x minus 6x, negative 1 minus 6 is negative 7x. Is that what we wanted? Yeah. So those there are the correct factors. Any questions on any of this here? We ready for the next one? Okay. So looking at this here, 2x squared plus 7x plus 6, is there a greatest common factor? No. I mean, there is with 2x squared and 6, but 7 is indivisible by 2. So we're going to start off with our 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. And our next step is going to be to find the sign. Since the third term is positive, our signs are the same, and they match the sign of the middle term, which is and positive. Factors of the first and third term. Factors of 2x squared, well, we know that we'll have x and x, yes? And the factors of 2 are what? Well, 2 and 1, yes? So we just need to figure out which one we're putting the 2 in. The first set of parentheses or the second? First. Now 6 has 2 sets of factors, 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. So we can do 2 and 3 first. Which number do we want to put in the first parenthesis? 2 or 3?
2.
So we can do 2 and 3. And we can check this here. 2x times 3, 2 times 3 is x plus 2x. 2 times x is 2x. And 6x plus 2x is 8x. Now again, we said there was no greatest common factor at the beginning, yes? Looking in that first set of parentheses, the way we have it set up, 2x plus 2, is there a greatest common factor there? Here, there's a greatest common factor of 2, yes? If there's not a greatest common factor to begin with, there won't be one in either set of parentheses. Because if there was, we could have factored it out and it would have sat out front.
So there it did matter where. So 1 and 6. I thought it like never mattered.
So we could do 1 and 6, but we can switch 3 and 2. Now, yes. Now, in a lot of these, so that there is more, we notice a pattern. The fact that if we have 2 that have a greatest common factor in a parentheses and there wasn't one to begin with, they don't normally share that space. It's just eliminating options. So 2x times 2 is 4x. 3 times x is?
Wait, no.
7x.
Is that what we wanted?
Yes, sir.
Never mind. I'm sorry. Stop. I have to rewrite everything because I wrong. Hey, you told me after.
Questions on any of this here?
Basically, this is going to be the work.
Now, guys, as we saw with this here, you're going to start seeing a lot of tricks tricks or kind of patterns that start emerging. Because if there's not a greatest common factor to begin with, there can't be one in either set of parentheses. So we know since this is 2x, the number that goes with 2x can't be even. So 2, 4, 8, 16, because we'd have a greatest common factor that would come out. So that means if we tried 1 and 6, I know that 6 couldn't go with the 2x. Only 1 can. Okay. But even if we don't remember that, we could still do 2x plus 6 times x plus 1 and check it, and it won't get the correct middle term. Any other questions on these here? Because we could, I want to go over this last one here, so I skipped one. And this here is the last one on the note sheet. Yes?
Yeah.
Well, there's one more after it. This one here, is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? So we have our two sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Yes, it makes the number smaller. Now, so if the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite.
So we can also have to flip the positive and negative.
So the way that I do these is I keep the signs, I just throw one as positive, one as negative. And I'll switch the terms. I don't normally mess with the signs. The only time I will flip the signs is if I get the correct middle term number, but wrong sign. So for here, it's what? Negative 5x. So if we set this up and get a middle term of 5x, positive 5x, I can flip the signs, change the first one from being positive to negative, and the second one from negative to positive, and it'll flip it from positive to negative 5x.
Wait, I'm confused, because instead of the third term is negative, then it's opposite signs, right?
So one is positive and one is?
Why would they just not be both positive?
Because if they're both positive, the middle term, positive times a positive is a positive.
Okay.
And if they're both negative, and negative times a negative is a positive. Again, the only time that we can get a negative is if one of them is positive and one of them is negative. Now the factors of 2x squared. Well, the factors of x squared are? Now the factors of 2 are? 2 and 1. So we just need to put a 2 somewhere in one of those two. So we put the 2 down.
Do you just look at this and know the answer every time?
Sometimes it takes me a few times looking at it. But again, the more that y'all do of these, the easier that they're going to get. Now we look at the factors of 7. Well, we have what? 1 and? Where do you want to put the 7? In the first set of parentheses or the second? 7, which means 1 goes in the second one. Now we're going to check this. Now 2x times negative 1 is 7 times x is plus 7x. So negative 2 plus 7, or 7 minus 2 is? It gives us 5x.
So
Yes.
positive in the second one, and negative in the first?
Yes.
Oh, this is going to
Because if the signs, the number that we got was the correct number but wrong sign, flip the signs. If we got the wrong number, change one of the terms. Because if we check it now, 2x times 1 is positive 2x. Negative 7 times x is negative 7x, which does give us a negative 5x. And this is it here. Any other questions on this here? 3 through 10.
That's not too bad.
Now, I will say this again, with these here, the more of them that you do, the better you're going to get it.